All right, lesson 3, importing media. So we're going to use the media browser to load video files. We'll use the import command to load graphic files. We'll work with proxy media. We'll use Adobe stock. We'll choose where to store and cache files, and then we'll also record ourselves a voiceover. Now, early on, as you start working inside of Premiere, there are parts of this that you're not going to be using. Highly doubt any of you are going to use proxy videos right now. Actually need to use a lower resolution to have it linked out of there. So a lot of what goes on inside of importing media really is just working to get all of our stuff into the project so we know where things are at. When we move on, then we look at lesson 4. Lesson 4 is going to be all about organizing media. So at that point, we'll really start talking about what other things can we do with it. You're going to find as you go in and you start working inside of it, you're going to have your own, like I said, workflow. You're going to have your own setup as to how you like to organize things. Some people organize them all in bins, special names and stuff, similar to like what the asset files for this book are set up. And other people just bring everything in and use it and just know what it's called and don't worry about organizing stuff in that fashion. Just depends on who you're working with. If you're working just with yourself and you know what everything is, it's not going to matter. So let's go ahead and go in and open up the project. So you can navigate to wherever you have your lesson files stored at. Again, since all of these were made on a previous version, it's always going to come up and let you know that it needs to convert it. So we'll just go ahead and we'll select OK. Then it should go through and bring up, in this case, just your first sequence that is in here. Now, if you want to, you can go in and give this a different name. You can do a file save as, or you can just leave it, keep working on that lesson 3_1, which it names after it went through and updated it. So we go and we start working with files. The key thing to understand inside of Premiere is that we're not actually moving the video files into the project. What we're ultimately doing is we're just simply going in and we're creating links to that original media. So it's pointing out to it. Those pointers that we see inside of here are what we refer to as clips, but those clips are always going to the original content. So don't go through and delete your videos once you actually import them, because again, they're not in here, even though yes, we use the term import. Really it's just going in there and creating ourselves a link to that file. Now we go through and bring things in. There's actually 3 different ways that we can kind of work with these. We can go into file import. So we can come up here and do our file import. We can also go ahead and we can drag it straight from the Finder. So if we have our Finder window up here, we can go ahead and we can drag this straight into here. And the other thing that we have available to us then is our media browser, which is down in the lower left-hand corner. So if we go and we click on that, that gives us our media browser. Now if we look at what we have in here for the media browser, media browser panel you should recognize is very similar to what you would see in the Finder on a Mac or File Explorer when you start getting into a PC. So it still functions the exact same way. So we come through and we select that, we're going to see folders out here on the side. It's going to allow us to go through and look at these. So instead of just seeing a name somewhere else, it's going to allow us to come in and view it. Like I said, it's down here in this lower left-hand corner. Helps speed up us on selecting things. So if we go into the different folders, and for me, I'm going to go ahead and navigate to just the desktop so we can start to see. So you can see here, as we look at them, that we have the thumbnails for them as we scrub through them. You're going to see that it's going to go through and adjust or play what is there. Now some major benefits to this are you can see what's there. Even when we come in, if say on the desktop you would only see an icon for something, in here you're actually going to see, like I said, for videos, if we go through and we start looking at the stuff related to this class, so if we come into here and we get into, there's the lecture videos, if we come into the lessons, assets, and we choose some of these, we'll start to see what exactly is in them. So the other thing you're going to notice as we go and we pull those up, that we are able to see, even though this is an Illustrator file, we're able to see what is here. When we go through and we start looking at Photoshop document, we're able to see what is here. So the nice thing about it is as we go through and we view them inside of here, we're not guessing as to what it is. We're able to see. So those files that aren't native files to the system, if we were to go in and pull up those files in the desktop, what would we see? If I pulled up Finder and I go to where the Bright Love Film logo.ai, what would we most likely see? You just see the Illustrator icon. So it doesn't allow us to see the file itself. So that's one spot where we're using the media browser works. So essentially the media browser functions a lot like Bridge does, and that you're able to still see the file even though it's sitting in a format that isn't standard to the individual machine. The other thing as we go through and use this, it starts to look at camera data, so it's going to understand what's inside of that. So if you're using a Canon DSLR, your iPhone's going to pick up all of the camera data related to it. If we go through and we start using clips, we can go in there and we can view those clips going across multiple things. So if I take and combine two things and bring them in here, even though you're using different media devices, it will still show the entire clip for it. We can also go in and we can view and edit what we have for our metadata. So if we want to go in here and add metadata to it, we can do that. Some applications will go through and utilize metadata for importing content or placing like text stuff in InDesign. In here, what it's going to go through and use, though, it's going to go through and understand what that frame rate is, pixel dimensions, and that they're all going to be built into that metadata as well. Now, if we choose our file import from here, what we're going to find is that if we get into those assets, that's not what I meant to do. Cancel. File, import, assets. So if we come in and we start to look at what we have on here, do we have a little bit of a thumbnail there? Yes. So we can come in and we can select individual items inside of here to import them as well. What's our shortcut for import? If you're not going to use the methods of folders, what's the shortcut key? Command-I. So if we hit Command-I is going to go ahead and open up our import dialog box. So once again, if I cancel this, if I hit Command-I, we're going to see the same window is going to pop up. The method that you use to go through and work with it is going to be something that you're going to develop, whether you choose to go to the media browser and bring things in, whether you choose to go and pull up the Finder menu, select multiple things and drag them in, whether you choose to go ahead and hit Command-I, whether you go to the file import, whichever route you take isn't going to matter. Just find that you start to repeat that, to build that into your workflow so that you're using those same things over and over again. As we go through and we start working with information, the files that are coming in, some of these files may be rather large. As I said, if you're going to go in and build and you're working with something that's large, then it allows us to go in and possibly work with proxy media. But as we go to ingest our information into here, what is it that we're going to bring in and how are we going to work with that? If you're using a proxy, you're probably going to have a different workflow. You're going to have a proxy workflow set up to set up the files, bring in the lower resolution as you go in to edit those. Now, as you go through to work with those, it understands what's happening with it. You have that lower resolution. When you go through and actually render out or export out the media, it will read the large version of it. So that original content that's in there, as opposed to what you're going to be using as the proxy. Now we go and we start ingesting media. Remember we talked about bringing things in from tape. We can also start talking about ingesting media from the standpoint of simply moving files into this. As we go to bring them inside of your project settings, it does allow us to go and decide how is it that we want to import the footage. What are we going to do with it? Now we go through and if we go in and we choose to actually copy it. So if we take this and copy the footage, what's going to happen is as we import those, Premiere Pro is actually going to go ahead and create a copy of the original files and going to place them in wherever you have that primary destination folder set up. So start thinking about where these things are being saved at. Remember, we have stuff cached into the same location. So as you go through and start to choose that, look at what you're working with. Transcoding. So with that, when we import the media files, it's actually going to convert them to a new format in codec. So if we go in and we want to bring it in and we want to make it something else, it's going to go through and transcode. So think about transform. So it's going to move it into a different setting as we pull that in. We can create a proxy. Again, in this case, we can create a lower resolution. It's going to be a lot easier on your systems. These machines in here aren't going to have any problem this semester with the videos that you're working with from the standpoint of processing power. But when you start getting into high definition, ultra high definition, 4K stuff, even 8K, you might start to find, you will start to find that it'll start to turn the machine down a little bit. And that's a situation where you normally want to go in and work with a proxy to it. And last, we have copy and create proxies. So with this, it's going to create copies of the original files into the location in which you choose for it. And it's also going to create a proxy as well. It's going to be stored in that proxy destination menu. So as we go through and we start to work with the project and we pull up our project settings, what you're going to find in there is that it's going to allow us to make those selections. Now, everything on here, based on our project, we're storing everything in the same location as the actual original file. You can change that. Again, be careful where you change the stuff to, but with that, it's going to start storing those things, those other areas. Those will need to be available. So if you put it on an external drive, and then your external drive goes kaput, but that's where you put the stuff at, everything else has gone kaput with it. So as you start to work with it, just keep that in mind as we go in to use it. So where do we go in and actually find this stuff? So if we come up here to our file setting, we can come down here to the bottom, we have our project settings, and in here we have ingest settings. So if you want to go in here and start to work with what is in here, what are we bringing in, what do we want it to do with it? So on our ingest settings, you're going to find there's a little checkbox. We'll go ahead and toggle that on, then it'll give us our options. So there we see our copy, our transcode, our create proxies, and lastly, copy and create proxies. Now, as we go through to work with those, where exactly is all of this stuff going to end up going? So with this, we have the setup for the preset. What is it using to copy in with? So it's going to verify. So that's where once it creates a copy, it goes back and checks through all the values to make sure everything matches up before it essentially is done. The other thing we have is our primary destination. So where exactly are we going to copy this to? Again, by default, it's going to be set the same as project. Everything inside of here, when we talk about where it's saving everything, proxies, all that stuff, is by default going to be set up to same as project. So with that, we can have that there. We can choose a different place. We can choose Creative Cloud Files, and we can choose the location. So if you are using cloud-based storage and not using the Creative Cloud itself as your storage, then you could go in here and set that up. So if you're using iCloud, if you're using OneDrive, if you're using Dropbox, I don't know if you can set Google Drive up or not, but all of those things that are there, if you're on your own machine, most likely you have a bar on the Finder that allows you to go in and select that area. Like I could go in and grab iCloud and it would use iCloud. We can go in and we can choose that. Same as project. In a lot of ways, it's going to speed things up usually with the system because it's not communicating across something else. If we go in here and we change this over so that we're actually doing proxies as well, you'll see proxy destination. So again, all of the same options are available to us. We can go in here and we can start to see what are the presets that are available to us. So we can go in and if we wanted to, we could choose some files to import. And with that, we can choose what exactly do we want to do with this. So these are a few different options. As we go down and look at them, if I go through and I select them, look down below here in the summary, it's going to let you know exactly what's going to happen. What are they creating with that? So in this case, where is it going to copy the clips to? It tells us where the proxies are going to be created at. It tells us the name of the preset. What's the video? So based on source, quality 100, Apple ProRes 422 proxy. Video is based on source, uncompressed, 48,000 hertz. So stereo 16-bit, and then we see our frame size. So as you click through those, you can see what are those options that are going to show up. You know, if we go to a medium resolution 8.264, what does that look like? If we go to large, so you can start to see what's happening with the frames as you go through to build it. So this is all the settings. The choice on here depends on exactly what it is that you want to go through and do with the footage. Now once you go through, you've looked at that, you can go ahead and you can click on cancel. I'm just going to jump back out of it. The main thing you'll find with some of the early stuff that we go through and look at inside of here, it's really just covering, letting you know where things are at. The depths in which we can get in Premiere Pro, we could spend a couple years on probably, going through and using all the tools, especially focusing in on what's available. So as we continue to work with it, know that this is, again, it's an introduction to it. It's an introduction to the fact that you can do proxies. We don't use proxies in here. We're not going to use a proxy. Unless for some reason you've got a super expensive camera and you're shooting stuff and it's not running like it's supposed to, then maybe we'll use one, but we'll talk about other ways as we work with the content and beginning to work around the system, how we can also simplify some of the preview stuff and still be able to work with it. So we go and we start working with media files. The nice thing about this is that we go and we use file-based cameras. So that's going to be your iPhones, your digital SLRs, GoPros, things along those lines. Those are all file-based. It's creating a file. We go to bring those in. We're bringing those in without any conversion because it doesn't need to convert them. So whether it's an AVI, an MOV, an MPEG-4, any of those, your standard ones that you'd be working with, are all going to show up in there and be able to function. Now, as you go through and you start working inside of here and working with the media files, make sure that you're creating different folders for each of your projects on the system. It's just much easier than going back in there and trying to figure out what video goes where. Even when you start doing stuff, working on real projects, outside of class, job-wise, start organizing stuff into a folder. Now, I don't organize my stuff the best for most things, but when I'm working on individual projects, they all have a folder. So with that, get used to doing that. When you go through and start working with things, the best thing to do if you can is copy the entire camera structure over the folder instead of going in there and pulling out individual names. Just grab the whole structure, bring it in there. That's where you have the breakdowns. They're going to be, usually it's a folder inside of that folder. But with that, you maintain that same structure, the hierarchy that's there. Some cameras have accessory files that go with them, so if you just bring everything over with it, it tends to go through and work better. Once you move it in, clearly mark it. Now they talk about marking it with camera information, card number, date of the shoot, how specific you need to get. You need to get specific enough so that you know what it is, you know where it's at, you know how to find the stuff, so that you can get back to it. And then the other thing that a lot of people forget about is create a second copy. You always want to make sure you have at least 2 copies of everything. Files do get corrupt. It happens. I've had it happen on projects even for the class. Students came in and all of a sudden they were working on it. I saw them working on it. They saved it. And then the next day they came back and all of a sudden it was corrupted. Don't know why, but they didn't have another copy of it. So you find yourself starting over. And the worst thing is if you don't have a copy of the original footage as well, you lose all of that. So you got to reshoot that. You don't have a second copy or backup of your stuff that you're working with inside of your project, then that's going to be gone as well. So we got to make sure you have a backup of that stuff on some sort of a separate drive. I strongly urge you to do that. And then start to think about where might you have a long-term storage. And with that, we start talking about long-term storage, again, cloud-based stuff that has its own redundancy built in. One advantage to using a cloud-based storage is that they automatically have a redundancy to it to secure your data. It doesn't mean that you can't lose it. It's still possible that you could lose it. But so have that redundancy kind of in place with that, whatever that is for you. If it's tape-based, I still have tapes in there from tape-based classes. Now I need to find a player to be able to ingest it and get it off of there, but I have a tape backup. Again, storage, where are you going? Downfall, of course, from video doing cloud-based is transfer rates. If you're on a location at home or something that has data limits, well, you're going to find as you start moving that data around, it's going to eat up your space that you have for transfer to that. But find something that's there for your storage, whatever that ends up being. In the past, we of course were using like DVDs, dual layer DVDs, which gives us close to 9 gigs of storage. But now things aren't coming with optical drives, so what are we going to do with that? Just be aware that as you work with it, there is that issue with it. So that's where sometimes once the project's done or stuff is done, using a cloud-based storage can be beneficial. Now we start looking at video types. It's probably easier just to say that any standard video format, Premiere is going to take. It doesn't matter what you're running it off of. You'll be hard-pressed to find something unless it's a very specific proprietary file format. Premiere Pro is going to open it. You're going to be able to view it. You're going to be able to work with it inside of here. So as we go in, we start working with the files. What else can we do now inside of the media browser? I don't use the media browser that much. But if we go into our media browser, we can see everything that's in here. Now, on any of the windows that we work with inside of Premiere Pro, the key that's going to be your friend, especially when you're focused on an area, is what they call the Graves key. That's the key that's going to be on the far left of your keyboard, just to the left of the 1, below the escape key, above the tab key. Once you are highlighted on a specific panel, if you hit that key, it will maximize that panel. If you hit it a second time, it'll take it back down. So if you were working in your program monitor and you wanted to see this nice and large, if we hit the Graves key, we're going to see that nice and large. So you can have that full screen, play it, see how stuff looks. Once you're done with it, you can go ahead and you can bounce back away from it. So get used to using that key because that's going to allow you, again, to zoom in and see what is going on and to work with your media browser. So if we go in here and we start to look at this, if for some reason you don't see your media browser, it should be in the lower left. Go ahead and reset to saved layout. And if you do that, it will bring everything up. So you can see here, this is the way it should be set for your default. So again, if I go back into here, select that, come up. Now we can go ahead and we can begin to navigate out to where our stuff is at. As we go in and we begin to navigate into here, we can see what is available to us. Across the top, we also have additional controls to move around. So here we have our arrow to go back. We also have a drop down. So this drop down, we look at it, how did we get to where we're at? So we started on the Macintosh HD, went to our users to whatever username. And mine, of course, is my name. On the machines here in the classroom, it would be student. Wherever it's stored at, the name of the folder all the way down until we got down into graphics. So if I wanted to back up a little bit, I go here to click on assets. It's going to take us back. We can also use the arrow key to go back as we start working inside of here as well. So if we get into our videos, and in here we're going to go ahead and navigate to the one called Theft Unexpected. Let me back out here just a little bit. So we have Theft Unexpected. Here's where you'll see different clips inside of here. Now as we go through and we start to work with these, right now we're going through and we're viewing them in our thumbnail view. Down here at the bottom, we're going to see our thumbnail view. We also have list view. Now, as we go through and begin to work with this, what you decide to use, again, is based upon your own choice. Now, if we are in thumbnail view, down here at the bottom, we also have the ability to change the scale of how we're seeing things. So we can make them really large, or you can make them back to where they're really small. With this, it's going to depend on what are you working on, what are you trying to see in it, what are you evaluating, are you looking at content, are you playing through this, are you setting a new poster frame, what is the goal of being in here as to how large you want to make them be. So when you go through, we can slide that around until you're happy with a size that you have. Now, any of these clips, if we want to, we can come in here and we can just select one. Doesn't matter which one you select. But once you go ahead and click on it, you'll notice now, as we go over top of it, it's no longer scrubbing. If it's not selected, if we go over top of it, this is our scrubbing. This allows us to go through and see the preview. If you look at it from a standpoint, if your cursor is on the far left of the clip, you're at the very beginning. As you move across it, once you get to the far right, you're now at the end of the clip. So really what we have as well is we have an invisible like little play line that goes, or playhead that goes across there as we move the cursor. Once we go through and we click on one, that playhead now shows up down there at the bottom of it. So you're going to see that blue bar, and you're going to see the little box on it. The little box is going to indicate that is your play area. Now as we go through to begin to work with this, we can scrub across it by grabbing hold of this at the bottom and scrubbing back and forth. The other thing we can also do is we can use the JKL keys. So if we hit J, it's going to go backwards. This is playing in reverse. If you hit K, it's going to stop. If you hit K again, it's going to start to play. We're going to use the space bar. K is going to stop it. You can also use the space bar to play and stop. If we look at L, L is going to automatically start playing it forward. So this will allow us to go in there if you want to jog, so make things go faster. If you hit L once, hit it again, it'll play faster, 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 faster. Again, we can hit K to stop it and go back and play. So as you go through and start to work, you can see kind of what's going on with them. So those are ways we can use those keys. Now just remember those keys, because those keys you can use as we're working in other areas as well. So let's go ahead and with this, we're going to go ahead and we're going to select all of these clips. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the first one. I'm going to hold down Shift and click on the last one. So as we go in here to work with these are currently selected. Now with all of these selected, we can come up here on any of these and we can right click on them. Now once we right click on them, we have two options. We have import, we have open in source monitor. Now we haven't talked about the source monitor yet, or haven't been working in the source monitors, I should say. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and just simply import these. So I'm going to move them into our project panel. So let's go ahead and say import. That's going to go through. You'll notice that jumps back over to our project panel now automatically. So inside of here, what we see is we see each of the files that are brought in. There's the first sequence that was in here when we started. And we're able to see information related to these. So frame rate, media start, media end, media duration. We start talking about time code. You notice that there's a start. The media start isn't all zeros. Because based upon the clip, where the clip came from, what the clip was cut out of, that's where it was at on the tape when it was actually imported. If we look over to media duration, that will tell you how long this is set. So we have hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. We look at video in point, video out points. We look at durations. So if things are in points and out points are listed, then that's what's going to be in there, or if they're inserted. So you're going to find that for, I think, all of these clips, they should be set to the media start's going to be the same as the in point. The media end's going to be the same as the out point. There's our video duration. And as we get in and we start working with files inside of Premiere, you're going to find, again, that there's a time code and there's also going to be a duration. Blue is going to be our time code. Gray is going to be our duration. Video info. So it's letting us know what the size of the frame is. It also lets us know pixel size. And with the audio that's in here, what is our audio content as well. So as we bring this in, there are different ways we can view this content. So right now we're looking at this in a list view, and we can see that down here in the lower left. So if we go ahead and we come over here and we click on icon view, so I go ahead and zoom back out, you'll see we have our icons. Inside of here, we also can go ahead and we can drag this up. So just like in the media browser, we have the ability to go in and scale what it is that we're looking at. And the last one over here we have then is freeform, which allows us to come in here and decide what we want to do with these. You'll see there isn't anything set. We can go in here and really start to, as I say, make these things look ugly. But with the freeform, it does allow us to go in there and move them around. So if you're going in and doing something different, you don't want to set the way it currently is or defaults to, you can go in and you can do that. So you'll see if you go in and out of it, you're going to notice when you come back into here that they are going to be located based upon where you last drew them to at this time. So I'm going to jump back over here and look at this. So this is, again, the way to view it, kind of the best way to view it, for me at least. I don't do a whole lot usually with lists because for me, I want to see what's actually in there. So we can also import graphics as we go and we start working with stuff. Graphics are going to be a key element that we're going to be using. So we're going to go in and be putting titles in. Maybe we'll deal with even credits and stuff along those lines. But it really will take in just about any graphic type. Just like it does videos, it handles a ton of graphics. So as we go in to work with that, we're going to import ourselves just a basic graphic into here. So let's go ahead and do a file import. Or, I mean, any way you want to go to import it, we can double click in the empty space in the project panel. We can hit Command I. We can go File Import. We can open up the Finder. Again, all of those are valid methods to import content. So we're going to get in here. We want to go into our graphics. So you're in the Lessons, Assets, Graphics. And we want the Theft Unexpected PNG. So it should be the bottom one. And we're simply going to come down here and say import. So now you're going to see that that's been brought in. Depending on the settings inside of Premiere and the way you have it set up is how long does it bring in a still clip for. You can change that setting. The default is going to be 5 seconds. But since it is a static clip, there isn't any animating elements to it. There are no items that we can go in and we can extend it as long as we want to extend it. It's not going to change anything. Just like we can go ahead and we can shorten it as well. It's not going to change anything. So we've gone and we brought this in. Now when we go and we start working with something inside of here, if it's a basic file, so JPEGs, PNGs, those are just going to come in. It's a normal clip, and that's the way it's going to treat it. If we go and we import something, say from Photoshop, so if we go ahead and we double click down here again and we navigate in, we're going to import something from Photoshop. It's going to ask us what we want to do with this. So let's go ahead and navigate back into those graphics. And inside of here, there's Theft Unexpected Layered. So if we're looking in here, there's Layered No Background. And then there's this Layered.psd. We're going to choose the second from the bottom. And we're going to say import. Now it's going to come up a little bit different than what we had with the other. So as we look in here, we have the import as. So merge all layers. This is going to take that, and from a Photoshop standpoint, it's going to flatten the image. That's exactly what it's going to do. So it's going to bring us in a flattened one. If we come in here and we say merge layers, in this case, it's going to go in here and only merge the layers that we select. So over here on the left, we have these check boxes. So depending on what it is that we go through and choose, that's what it's going to go in and merge. We have individual layers. So if we go in here, we start to work with the individual layers. Any layers that we go in and select are going to come in and be their own separate clip. So can we do some basic animation inside of here with these? Yeah, we could if we wanted to do it in here. Don't think I would choose Premiere Pro as my multimedia animator, but we could. We could bring them in here. They'll be separate ones. We could have them show up at different times, go away. If we wanted them to move based on positions and keyframes, we could do stuff like that as well. So this will come in. It'll create these all as 3, or how many did I select now? 5 different clips will actually come in from it. And then the last one we have then goes through and starts to work with a sequence. So it's going to select those. And each one is going to be created then into a new sequence. Down here for footage dimensions, this allows us to choose what exactly are we working with. Are we going with document size or layer size? So as we go through and we start to build it, what is the original size of the Photoshop document? And it's going to go to that size. or if we go through and we work with it, it's going to essentially clip itself down just to where we have pixel content related to that individual layer. So you can choose that, make that decision inside of here as you go through and work with it. By default, it's going to look at everything based on document size. So quickly, if we go up here and look, once you do merge all layers, or if you're on merge all layers, you'll see defaults to the document size for it. So for this, let's go ahead and let's come down here to sequence. And I'm going to just have the theft, the unexpected, and stroke. So the second theft, the second unexpected, and the stroke selected. And with these, we're going to set that to sequence. We're going to set the footage dimensions down to document size. And then we'll go ahead and we'll click on OK. So we'll let this go ahead and import what we have here. So now what you're going to see here is we have a folder over here, or as they refer to them inside of here are bins. So we've just created ourselves a new bin that has theft unexpected. If you were to jump into here, you're going to see those items that were part of it inside of here. Now, as you go through to begin to navigate, another way we can work once we get inside of a bin is you have this little folder with the up arrow over here. This is going to allow us to move back out of here. So when we click on that, it's going to step back out into the area that we were at. Now if I go ahead and take this and we jump back out of here, we can go into our time unexpected. So we want to go to the sequence that we have. So inside of that folder, remember when we chose sequence? This is where getting used to what you're looking at in the corner. Footage, sequence, footage, sequence. We're going to come in here to the sequence. We're going to go ahead and double click on it inside of here. Now once you double click on that, you'll see what comes up over inside of the timeline. So each of those individual items are there. So inside of here we can see all three of them. Down here on the bin, when we're looking at inside there, we can still scrub across there and see that clip. It doesn't go anywhere. We look over here, we see how it goes in there. So we have video 1, video 2, video 3. If we go back and we look at or think about how we imported it, remember we saw sequence, we clicked on those three. The three things were called theft, unexpected, and the stroke. So with those inside of here, we see each of those items. Now if you're wondering what's on each layer, inside of our timeline over here on the far left in the header section, we're going to see this visibility. If you go ahead and you toggle those on and off, so once you see the slash through the eye, it's not being seen. So theft disappeared, unexpected disappeared, and the stuff that's on the stroke layer disappeared. So we can start to see these as independent of each other. It's a situation where we could also come in, as I said, and if we start dealing with keyframes and stuff with that, we can talk about how things are positioned and could we allow things to come in? Yeah, most of the time inside of here, though, when we have things pop up, it jumps its way in, or we do a transition from black as it fades in and fades out. So it allows us to go in and look at those. Across the bottom, you're going to see the same controls. So if you're in there working with it, you can go through and choose those individual things. And then all of these, we go through and we start to work with the different panels. You're going to have panel menus available to you. If we look at the panel menu related to the bin for the theft unexpected layer, this is what we're going to see inside of here. So we have the ability to go in, close panel, undock panel. So we can move these panels around. If you have multiple bins open, you want to be able to access them instead of having to come back into here. We can do that as well. So again, it's all about how you choose to start to work from. So we have the ability to go in and create a lot of items inside of here. We can select items and then we can create a new bin from those selections. There's search bins. So when we get into organizing media in the next lesson, you're going to see other ways that we can go in and begin to work with what's in here. We can also come up here and simply say close panel. And that's going to go ahead and remove that bin from the lower left-hand panel, which was docked in there with the project media browser and the rest of those items. Now, another thing that we're going to work with is going to be Illustrator files. Now, Illustrator files come in a little bit different than Photoshop files in that we can go through and start to work with the layers. But what's going to happen with them is that it's going to bring them in as a flattened version. So let's just go ahead and import. So we can do our Command I. Okay, we're making sure, let me cancel something. Let's make sure something here. Let's go in here to my project panel. I'm going to uncheck or click off in an empty space so that Theft Unexpected Layered isn't selected. The reason why I want to do that is otherwise when I go in and import the graphic here from Illustrator, it's going to bring it into whatever bin is active. So I'm going to go back, make sure nothing is selected, and then I'm going to go ahead and import. We're going to navigate back into our graphics area. And inside of here at the very top, we have this Bright Love Film Logo.ai. So we're going to go ahead and select that and say import. Then we'll see that it imports down here. Now, as you look at it, you may notice something a little bit different inside of our project panel than you noticed when we were looking at it inside of the selection. And that's going through and starting to look at that background area. So what you're going to see inside of here right now is it goes to black. That's the default setting for it. So as this comes in, what's going to happen with that is it flattens it. So unlike Photoshop where we have the option for the layers, anything from Illustrator is going to automatically be flattened. Now if we go through and we go ahead and we double click on that Bright Love film logo, it's going to open up in the source monitor directly above that. Now as you look at this, you probably notice a little bit of a problem. What's our problem? We can't see what's all there because the black, since the default's out for the black, because that has to do with what we have for a background color inside of a project. It goes through and we can't see what's going on with that. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and adjust how it is that we're viewing this. So down in the lower right hand corner, you're going to see the little wrench. There's one in the project monitor as well. We're going to go ahead and select that. Now as we click on that, what is it we're looking for? Well, we want to go in here and be able to view this. So we're going to come down here where it says transparency grid, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn that on. Now as soon as you turn that on, it gets rid of that black on there. So it's indicating to us, okay, we want to see this on a transparent background. So now we can see the Bright Love film going all the way across it. There are other things available to us inside of here as well. So if we start to look at it, there's things that are controls that you want to have start over here, because these are the settings related to the source monitor. Now these do only impact the source monitor. This is not impacting the program monitor and will not impact, when we start talking about export or outputting this to media. This is just simply for viewing inside of our source monitor. So we can go back in here and we can go ahead and we can turn that back off. And you'll see it skips back away to it. Now, unfortunately, Premiere Pro does not, as I said, give us an opportunity to go ahead and import anything in Illustrator into separate layers. It's always going to merge them into that one single clip. So if you have pieces in an Illustrator file that you want to do different things with or have different control over them, you're going to have to bring them in as separate individual clips on your own. We go through, we start bringing Premiere Pro in. So if we start thinking about Illustrator, Illustrator's vector graphics, so resolution independent, base mathematical calculations, of course developed because of bombing. So we start talking about how things move. So as we go through and look at that, we have those nice crisp edges as we scale it up, scale it down. Now anytime we bring an AI file into Premiere Pro, it's going to rasterize it, so it's going to make it pixel based. So keep that in mind as you bring it into here. It is going to convert it for you. You don't do anything special for it. It will convert it and bring it into here. As it does so, it automatically anti-aliases the edges. So it's going to smooth out as it goes through and starts to work from point to point. So it doesn't just go from color to the next, because otherwise we'd get that ragged edge. So it automatically goes through and drops the color, essentially creates a transparent effect as it goes out and blends to nothing. It's going to automatically do that for you. And then the other thing it does with that is any areas on there that do not have content. So if you think about empty areas inside of Illustrator, so if you don't have something on the artboard, when you import that into here, it's going to automatically make that transparent. So you don't have to do anything fancy to it. You don't have to choose something else. most of us work with a white artboard, so anything that is white, and I use that term loosely because if you have white on your image, since it has white color content to it, it will stay white, but your back page, your artboard area is going to become transparent. Now, if we go into these, we can create subfolders as well. We can also import whole folders. So as you start to work, we can put a bin in a bin. We can also import a whole folder. So as you go through and you start to shoot your projects and you put those different videos into a folder, you don't have to go in and import those one at a time. So I'm going to come back over here with this one select. It's not going to matter. We're going to say, go ahead and say import. So Command I. So I'm going to jump to or file import or double click in an empty area of the project panel. And we're going to navigate into our lessons assets. And there's this stills folder. So I'm just going to click on the stills folder. With this selected, I'm just going to go ahead and say import. Now what's going to happen is you're going to see a new bin down here called stills. If you double click and go inside of that, you're going to notice that there's another bin inside of there. If you want to play with the pun, it's there's nested bins for our eagles inside of here. So when we bring these in, this allows us to import an entire folder. So you're not stuck bringing them in one by one by one. Now, once you get inside of here, you can navigate through these just like any others. So we can pull them up and begin to look at those items. So as we go through to build them, especially as you first start out, you're going to have probably all of your video files. This is where when I talk about developing that structure and organizing your media, if you have it all organized nice and neat, you've imported them all and you start dropping them into folders. When you go to start the project, you could just do a large import that entire folder, and there it is. And you know right where everything's at. It's going to have that structure to it for you to go in and work with it. Now, other things we can also go through and work with is we can come in here and we can begin to start to search for content. So if we're inside of a folder and we want to find something, we can find it in here, looking for names. The other thing we have is the ability to go through and work with libraries. Now, if we go ahead and we bring up our libraries, if you're working in your own Creative Cloud, you may have things that show up down here. You might find color content. You might find other videos that you dropped in there. You might find logos. What's really nice with library too, like I said, if you're designing stuff and you create your own little title block because you're doing your own content, you can put that into your library and it'll always be there. So when you start projects, if you always have a title block at the beginning and the end, you can just drag it right out of the libraries, drop it in there, the beginning at the end, and it's always going to be there. When you open up Illustrator, it's going to be in there. If you design it in Illustrator, you can actually collect it in there and drop it into your library right in Illustrator, and that content's going to show up in your libraries in here, and you can just pull it back out of here. You don't have to drag the file around. Now, the other thing we do is we can also come over here and we can start to search. So who knows what we're going to find? I don't get anything for a sloth. Well, that's no fun. I know there's one for a plane because I've already searched for it. So you'll see in here we can go in and we can start to have content inside of here. As we go through and use this is looking at Adobe stock that's available. All of these are watermarked until you buy it. Now the nice thing about these, if you're going through and you're building something or you're trying to show a project or show something, we can work with this. This one will come in here. It'll be watermarked, so it'll still have the Adobe stock logo across it, but you can still use it. The content still works, the video still works, it still plays. And then if you just did this and you presented this to a client, the client goes, I love it, we're going to go with that. Then you simply can go back in here and you click on the little link to purchase it, and once you purchase it, the video automatically just stays in there. So all that's going to happen is the watermark is going to disappear. So if you're going to use that, you can go through and you can work that way to search for it. I mean, we can, how are we not getting anything else to come up? So yeah, you should be able to go in there and start to search through, and you should find additional content that comes in. That's Adobe stock. They used Sky, but I'm still not. But that'll allow you to search. That's one method you can go in and use as well. The next thing we're going to look at is as you start working on projects, sometimes you're going to have stuff set up that you want a narration track to it. And you can kind of pace out what it is that you want it, how long it's going to be, what the actual audio content is. And then for just like your projects for class, you'll have like James Earl Jones or Morgan Freeman voice it for you because everyone has access to him for voiceovers, right? So with that, you're going to do yours first, and then you can let Morgan Freeman send his into you as you go through and use it. So we're going to look at narration tracks. Well, what is it we want to go through and do? Well, we're going to build what we call Scratch Audio Track. It's just there for us to start to think about timing and work with timing. All of these machines have a microphone on them. So it's connected. It's the default audio setup to it. So as we go through to record it, you shouldn't have any trouble having this work. So if we go down here to our timeline panel, we've got this Theft Unexpected layered sequence still open, still displayed down here. We're going to go in here and we want to begin to work with the audio that's here. Now, all of our audio stuff has buttons over here inside of our header. It is possible, depending on what you're working with, that you may not be able to see them all. If so, you can drag this down. So go between them and then drag this down to actually make the header taller. Now, as we start to look at the buttons, most of you probably already have this voiceover record button on there. If you don't have that on there, then we need to go in and edit all of our buttons that are inside of here. So we can come up here and we can start to look at what's displayed inside of here. So these are the things that are available to us. So again, it's the wrench. We have the ability down here to customize. So if for some reason you don't have something, like we come here to customize audio, you're going to see these are all buttons that we can move on to there. There's the voiceover that we can click on, drag down here, and we can drop in its place. Why is my alert going off on my thing for some reason? So we can go ahead and move that voiceover in there. If you don't have the voiceover, drag it in there. If you have it in there, we can go ahead and we can just leave it in that place. So I have it. We can click OK. Some of the other ones that are in there dealing with keyframes, previous keyframe, next keyframe. If we're on a keyframe, add a keyframe. Work when we go through and we start animating content that's inside of here. So when we come in here, what we have is we have our voiceover record. Now if we go ahead and we right click on this, so we're right clicking on the microphone. In here you'll find the voiceover record settings. If you go ahead and select that, what should come up here is you'll see what it's going to name it. So audio 1, what's the source? System default, iMac microphone. The input, system default, iMac microphone. Countdown sound cues. So on here we can go ahead and we can deal with countdown. We can also come in here and look at the pre-roll for 3 seconds, post-roll for 2 seconds as we go through to record what is there. So if you want to see the countdown, you can do that. It should give you the numbers coming across the screen. So once that's set, this is also then a test here, let you know what's going on with it. How loud is it going to end up being? And we can go ahead and say close. So now with that closed, you may want to make sure you go ahead and mute or turn down what you're working with. You may get some feedback if you have your speakers close enough to it, or if you have a different microphone sitting close to speakers. So you can turn that down to reduce the potential for feedback. So as we go through to start to work with it, we went ahead and we heightened up our audio 1 header on here. And it's simply going to come over here and we start to look at this. This is the playhead. So when we start thinking about the playhead, we're going to begin recording wherever this playhead is located at. As we move this, this is known as scrubbing. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and make sure this is back at the beginning of our timeline. So we can do that by dragging it to zeros and seeing that up here in our time code. We could also go ahead and while we're on there, hit the home key. It's also going to take you back to the beginning. Or if it was out here somewhere, we could always click inside of our time code, hit 0, and hit return. How you choose to navigate these, once again, is up to you. It is your individual preference. So what's going to happen is we want to go ahead and record. So we're going to come in here, we're going to click on voiceover record. We click. And as it goes through and records, you get to hear yourself. Exciting stuff, isn't it? So you can go through and you can hear the stuff. If you go back in, you can begin to play it. But this is a way to quickly get yourself some audio into here. Could you use that as a final export? Yeah, you certainly could. You can come in here and do this, capture the audio. So as you're doing the voiceover here, you can do it that way. You have no video to it. And we could go ahead then, and later on we get into it, it's like clear back in lesson 13. We start talking about sweetening sound. Yeah, we could record this and then go in with all of our sound effects and control it and give us an entirely different output at the end. Now, anytime you go through and you start capturing audio, and we don't do a heavy thing in here in audio because we just don't. So with that, typically when you go to capture, you're going to make a lot of adjustments to it so that you're capturing it really close to what you want it to sound like anyways, and then you're going to go in there and you're going to tweak some of the things. And here we're getting, this is really as basic as it gets on a capture setup, purely from an audio setting. Nothing in here to control. We're running it nothing through no mixers, nothing to control what the input is to that. So it does allow us to go in and work with that. So it went through on its brief setup. The pre-roll, 3 seconds essentially is what it goes through as it starts to work. And then it kicks in, we take it, and then as we get to the end and release, it rolls itself out for that. So we go through, we have this set. We could go ahead and we could save this if we want to. Remember, as we go through and we start bringing things in, you may find that based upon how you set up the project, what you're working with videos, the ability to maybe have to conform some of the footage, which is going to happen automatically when we go through and we bring that into the sequence. We know we have our sequence already in there, it's set. Once that comes in there, if it's not right, it's going to warn us of that. The biggest thing as we go through and start working with here is get used to how you want to go about importing your content. Figure out what the workflow is that you're going to use to do that. Whether it starts in your system itself and just bringing the files into your computer, forming them into folders, and then bringing that entire folder in, which then of course becomes a bin once it hits Premiere, and then you have the file structure in there that matches up what you have externally as well. That can be a really good way to work with it. Once you've figured out how you're going to get your stuff into here, the next thing is going to be organizing if it's not organized already, and then ultimately we'll get into going and beginning to work with the essentials of video editing.